Welcome to Musy Horror World, and hello to tonight's terrifying tale. If you're ready to dive into the supernatural world, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss any of our spine-chilling stories. We have a lot more eerie tales coming your way, and trust me, you won't want to miss a single one. If you enjoyed our ghostly tales, please make sure to like this video because it helps us bring more creepy content to you. And as always, we love hearing from you. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. So, sit back, take a deep breath, and prepare yourself for tonight's haunting story, because what's about to happen, you won't believe. Story number 1. Imagine a house, long abandoned, where the walls once whispered stories of life now lost to time. A place forgotten by most, yet alive with an eerie energy. A house that no one dares to enter until now. But what if this haunted, decaying structure wasn't just a relic of the past? What if, deep within its rotting halls, there's a celebration unlike any other? A party thrown by unseen hands, where the air is thick with spectral laughter and the furniture dances on its own accord. Welcome to the Poltergeist Party. Tonight, we'll explore the chilling truth behind an abandoned house where the only guests are ghosts, and the only host is something far more sinister than anyone can imagine. On the outskirts of a forgotten town, hidden beneath layers of dust and decay, stands a house that time seems to have left behind. Yet, for those brave enough to venture close, there's a strange phenomenon no one can quite explain. Beneath the flicker of moonlight, the old mansion seems to hum with an unnatural energy, an energy that draws the curious and the daring like moths to a flame. Locals whisper of strange lights, unsettling noises, and the occasional silhouette glimpsed through cracked windows. But it's not just the house itself that's peculiar. Rumors speak of an event that occurs only under the cover of darkness, the Poltergeist Party. Every year, on a night known only to the spirits, the house becomes alive in a way no living person could ever imagine. Furniture shifts, glasses clink, and a spectral crowd gathers. It's a celebration, but not the kind anyone would want to attend. No human is welcome at this gathering, and yet, the restless spirits seem to invite their own. They celebrate their eternal existence, and the question remains, why are they here? What do they want? And what happens when a living soul stumbles into this ghostly realm of revelry? By the end of this video, you'll wish you never dared to uncover the truth behind the Poltergeist Party. So, stay close, because this is a story you won't want to miss. And who knows, the next time you hear laughter in the dark, you might just wonder if it's the ghosts inviting you to their eternal celebration. There's an eerie silence that surrounds the Poltergeist Party, situated deep within the woods, far from the nearest town, lies a mansion that seems to have been abandoned for decades. The windows are broken, the roof has caved in, and nature has begun to reclaim the land. It looks like the perfect setting for any horror movie, but the truth is far more unsettling. What most people don't know is that, hidden within the rotting walls of this forsaken home, there exists an event that defies the laws of time and space. It's not just a haunting. It's a celebration of the damned, a gathering of restless spirits trapped between worlds. The locals call it the Poltergeist Party. The rumors began decades ago when a few brave souls who dared enter the house never returned. Those who escaped with their lives spoke of strange noises, unexplainable movements, and shadows that danced in the corners of their vision. But the most unsettling part? They reported hearing laughter, loud, joyful, and distinct. It wasn't the kind of laughter that comes from a group of children playing. No, this was the laughter of something far older. The laughter of spirits who were trapped in the afterlife, unable to move on, but still clinging to the memories of better times. And, for one night every year, they relive those memories in the form of a spectral celebration, a party that no living person is supposed to witness. The air around the house is always thick with an unnatural energy, especially on the night of the poltergeist party. The moonlight casts long shadows, and the wind howls as if warning anyone nearby to stay away. Yet, every year, when the clock strikes midnight, the house awakens. It's as if the very walls hum with life. Old portraits that once graced the walls now seem to smile knowingly, and the grand chandelier, which was once a symbol of wealth and opulence, begins to sway, its crystals tinkling like the sound of glass being filled. Then it starts. The furniture shifts. Chairs move of their own accord, swirling around an invisible dance floor. Tables set themselves with fine china, silverware, and half-filled glasses. The sound of glass clinking can be heard throughout the house, but no human hands are present to make it happen. It's the spirits gathering in the rooms they once inhabited, reliving their long-lost celebrations, feasts, and nights of revelry. But here's the most unsettling part. The spirits aren't just sitting in silence, lost in their memories. No, they seem to be alive in their own way. There's an energy in the air, something dark and dangerous. The music that once played through the grand piano echoes through the mansion as though it were a real band performing, not an echo from the past. The spirits, dressed in tattered remnants of their finest clothes, float around the mansion as if they're caught in a trance, unable to break free of the celebration. They raise their glasses, clink them together, and toast to what? Eternity? A life lost? Or perhaps they are trapped in a never-ending cycle, forced to recreate the same night over and over again. But every year, the story grows more disturbing. A few brave souls have tried to investigate. They've ventured into the house with cameras, seeking to capture the phenomena on film, hoping to uncover the truth behind this paranormal party. Some have been successful in recording strange noises, flashing lights, and cold spots, but others have never returned. One infamous story involves a group of college students who made the mistake of visiting the house on the night of the poltergeist party. They set up camp outside, waiting for the midnight hour. As the clock struck 12, they heard the first sounds of movement from within. At first, it was faint, the sound of footsteps echoing through the halls. Then, the unmistakable sound of music began to float through the air. It was slow at first, the faint melody of a piano. Then, the laughter started, and it wasn't the playful, carefree kind. It was unsettling, almost mocking. The students, terrified but determined to uncover the truth, crossed the threshold of the mansion just as the front door slowly creaked open. The moment they entered, the temperature dropped. Their breath misted in the air. They could see the ghostly figures, the translucent shapes of the spirits, dancing and swirling as though no one had ever left. But what was most terrifying wasn't just the sight of the ghosts. It was the feeling that, somehow, they were being watched, a sensation that only grew stronger the deeper they ventured into the mansion. As they climbed the stairs, the sounds of the party grew louder. They reached the ballroom, and what they saw would haunt them forever. The room was filled with dancing apparitions, their feet never touching the ground. Their faces were twisted in expressions of joy and sorrow. But it wasn't the ghosts that terrified them the most. It was what they saw next. In the center of the room, there was a chair, one that had been empty when they first entered. But now, it was filled with someone, or something, alive. A figure, barely human, its eyes glowing a dull red. It was neither living nor dead, a creature of darkness that had somehow been drawn to the house to join in the spectral celebration. Terrified, the students tried to leave, but as they turned to flee, the door slammed shut behind them. The music grew louder, the laughter more sinister. They felt the cold breath of the spirits around them, and with every passing second, they were drawn deeper into the madness of the poltergeist party. Their final footage, captured just before their cameras went dead, shows them running through the halls, pursued by the unseen forces. The last thing they caught on tape was the haunting laughter, echoing like a distant memory. The mansion, now once again abandoned, remains as it always has, standing silent in the night, waiting for the next group of curious souls to enter. Some say the house is cursed, others say it's merely a trap set by the spirits themselves. But one thing is certain: the poltergeist party continues year after year, and those who wander too close will always be drawn into its grasp, whether they wish to or not. As we draw the curtains on this chilling tale, we're left with more questions than answers. The poltergeist party continues to haunt the abandoned mansion, and the restless spirits, forever trapped in their eerie celebration, seem to beckon the curious to witness their spectral revelry. Every year, the house becomes a stage for a haunting that no living soul should ever witness, but some are drawn to it, hoping to uncover the truth, only to become part of the legend themselves. What do these spirits truly want? Are they trapped in an endless cycle, doomed to relive their final night? Or is there something darker at play? We may never know, but the stories from those who dared to enter the house make one thing clear: the poltergeist party is a gathering no one should want to join. Now, we want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced something that made you wonder if you were in the presence of something beyond this world? Share your stories in the comments below. We love hearing from you. And if you found this eerie tale as chilling as we did, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another spine-tingling adventure with us. Who knows? Maybe next time, we'll uncover another ghostly gathering you won't want to miss. Until then, keep your lights on and your doors locked, because some celebrations are better left unseen. Story number 2. It starts innocently enough. A flicker, barely noticeable, as the light bulb in your room dims for a split second before coming back to life. Maybe it's faulty wiring, or the bulb is about to burn out. You shrug it off. But then it happens again, and again. The rhythm becomes strange, deliberate, as if someone, or something, is trying to get your attention. That's exactly what happened to Rachel, a college student renting a small apartment in the city. The building was old, and the flickering light in her hallway didn't seem unusual at first. Just a bad bulb, her landlord had said, promising to fix it. But weeks passed, and the flickering persisted. Soon, Rachel began to notice a pattern. The light only flickered when she was alone, late at night. At first, she tried to ignore it. She even joked about her haunted hallway to friends. But the more she observed, the more unsettling it became. The flickering seemed almost intentional, like Morse code, like someone or something was trying to communicate. One night, fed up with the constant interruptions, she decided to replace the bulb herself. As she unscrewed the old one, her fingers brushed against something cold, sticky, and wet. She pulled her hand back, heart racing. That's when the bulb fell, shattering on the floor, revealing a small, folded piece of paper wedged inside the fixture. Scrawled in a shaky hand were the words, "Don't look up," but by the time Rachel read the message, it was too late. Stay with me as we unravel the chilling mystery behind the flickering lights. What seemed like a harmless malfunction turned into a living nightmare. What's hiding in the shadows of your own home? And what happens when the lights finally go out? It began with a simple flicker, a momentary dimming of the hallway light that Rachel barely noticed. She had just moved into her cozy but somewhat weathered apartment, the kind of place where the walls carried stories of previous tenants. The flickering didn't seem unusual at first. After all, it was an old building. Probably just bad wiring, she thought, shrugging it off. But over time, the flickering became impossible to ignore. It wasn't random. The light would pulse softly when she walked past, almost as if acknowledging her presence. On some nights, it would blink in a strange, rhythmic pattern, like a silent code she couldn't understand. Her friends laughed when she mentioned it, teasing her about her paranormal paranoia. Still, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. One evening, while preparing dinner, the light began its usual dance. This time, it flickered so violently that the bulb buzzed audibly, then went out entirely. Frustrated, Rachel grabbed a flashlight and climbed onto a chair to unscrew the bulb. As she turned it, she felt a strange resistance, as if the bulb didn't want to come loose. When it finally did, her fingers brushed against something cold and wet inside the socket. Her stomach churned as she pulled her hand back, expecting to see grease or old residue. Instead, her fingers were smeared with a dark, sticky substance that smelled faintly of iron. Blood. Panicking, she dropped the bulb, which shattered on the floor, revealing a crumpled piece of paper wedged inside. Unfolding it with trembling hands, she read the words scrawled in shaky handwriting. "Don't turn off the light." The message haunted her. Who had left it? Why? And why was it hidden inside the bulb? Rachel's curiosity quickly turned to fear. That night, she couldn't sleep. The hallway, now cloaked in darkness, seemed alive with whispers. At first, they were faint, soft murmurs that could almost be mistaken for wind. But as the hours dragged on, they grew louder, forming fragmented words. "Help! Trapped! Don't leave me!" Rachel tried to convince herself it was her imagination, a product of her growing unease. She avoided the hallway as much as possible, leaving every other light in the apartment on. But no matter how hard she tried, the flickering hallway light loomed in her mind, a silent reminder of the unknown. The following week, Rachel noticed something else. Her reflection in the hallway mirror didn't seem quite right. It was subtle at first, a fleeting sense that her movements didn't match perfectly. But then, one evening, as she walked past the mirror, she saw it clearly. Her reflection standing still, staring back at her, her breath caught in her throat. She stood frozen, her heart pounding, as the reflection slowly raised its hand, pointing toward the hallway bulb. Then it mouthed a single word. "Run." Terrified, Rachel called her friend Mia, who rushed over with a mix of excitement and skepticism. "It's probably just stress," Mia said, trying to reassure her. But when she walked into the hallway, she stopped dead in her tracks. The bulb, now dimly glowing despite being shattered just days before, pulsed faintly. Mia reached out to touch it, but the moment her fingers brushed the glass, a loud crack echoed through the apartment. Both women screamed as the hallway plunged into darkness. And then, the door to Rachel's bedroom slammed shut. Inside the room, the air was suffocatingly thick. Shadows danced across the walls, their movements chaotic and unnatural. The whispers were back, louder than ever, overlapping and growing into a deafening roar. "Who's there?" Rachel shouted, her voice cracking. The only response was the bulb, flickering more furiously than before. It seemed to be spelling out a message. Desperate, Rachel grabbed her phone and recorded the pattern, later decoding it to reveal a chilling phrase. "You're not alone." Rachel's landlord was no help, brushing off her concerns and insisting the building had no history of anything unusual. But Rachel wasn't so sure. She began digging into the apartment's past, uncovering a trail of strange incidents, tenants who had vanished without explanation, reports of bizarre electrical malfunctions, and whispers of a tragedy involving a child who had died in the building decades ago. The deeper she delved, the clearer the pattern became. The light wasn't just flickering, it was warning her. But of what? One night, determined to get answers, Rachel set up a camera in the hallway and left it running overnight. When she reviewed the footage the next morning, her stomach turned. For hours, the bulb flickered steadily, but at exactly 3 a.m., the screen went black. When the video resumed seconds later, there was a figure standing under the light. A woman, her face obscured by shadows, holding a bulb in one hand and pointing toward the mirror with the other. Rachel couldn't take it anymore. She packed a bag and decided to leave the apartment, at least for a few days. But as she reached for the doorknob, the hallway light burst into a blinding glow. She turned to look, and there it was again. The figure from the footage, now standing inches away, its hollow eyes locked on hers. The light went out, and Rachel screamed. What is haunting the hallway light? Is it trying to warn Rachel or trap her? And what lies behind the cryptic messages and chilling reflections? Stay tuned as we unravel the horrifying truth behind the flickering lights. This is a story that will make you question whether the next flicker in your home is just a malfunction or something far more sinister. And so, the light flickers on, its haunting dance a mystery that refuses to be solved. Was it warning Rachel of a greater danger, or was it the danger itself? Perhaps the answers lie not in the light, but in the shadows it casts, the ones we ignore, the ones that watch us in silence. If this story has left you with chills and questions that won't go away, then I invite you to take a moment before you turn off your screen. What's the next step in this unraveling mystery? Could Rachel's story be just the beginning? If you're just as captivated by tales that make you double-check the corners of your room or second-guess that flickering bulb in your hallway, then don't let this be the last story you hear tonight. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to ensure you never miss the next eerie encounter. Leave a like if this story kept you on edge, and let me know in the comments. What would you do if you were Rachel? Would you stay and uncover the truth? Or would you leave and never look back? Your support keeps the lights on here, literally and figuratively. And if the whispers in the dark haven't scared you off yet, there's always another tale waiting just around the corner. So stay curious, stay brave, and as always, be careful what you uncover, because sometimes it's the flickering lights that know the most. I'll see you in the next one. Or will I? Story number 3. Imagine owning a photograph that seems perfectly ordinary at first. It's a snapshot of a family gathering, a moment frozen in time. You hang it on the wall, maybe next to the others, not thinking much of it. But then, something strange happens. The next time you look at it, the picture isn't the same. The people in it are different. The scene, altered. You convince yourself it's your imagination, but the changes are undeniable, and it happens every single time you gaze at the photo. This is exactly what happened to Emma when she inherited an old family album from her grandmother's attic. Among the faded pictures and yellowed pages, one photograph stood out. It was a simple portrait of her great-grandparents, taken in the 1920s, standing in front of their old house. She thought it was nothing special, just a piece of family history. That is, until the moment she first noticed the change. At first, it was subtle, a shadow behind her great-grandmother that wasn't there before. The next day, It was the faces of the people in the background, now smiling in a way they hadn't before. Confused and unsettled, Emma began to watch the photograph more closely, only to discover that it changed every time she looked at it. The most chilling part? The figure in the background, at first a vague outline, began to take shape, moving closer and closer to the family in the photograph, until Emma could no longer ignore it. Who or what is in the photo with them? And why does it keep changing? Stay with me as I dive deep into the eerie mystery of the Phantom's photograph, a tale so strange. It will make you question every photo you have hanging on your walls. Could it be that some images capture more than just a moment in time? What if they capture something far darker? Emma had always loved visiting her grandmother's old house. It was filled with relics from the past, faded photographs, delicate lace curtains, and antiques that seemed to hold stories of their own. When her grandmother passed away, Emma inherited a few things, including a large, dust-covered album she'd found tucked away in a corner of the attic. The pages were brittle, the ink fading, but one photo caught her eye immediately. It was a black and white portrait of her great-grandparents standing in front of their house, a beautiful, stately building that had long since crumbled into disrepair. The photo had an old-world charm, with the couple dressed in 1920s fashion, smiling softly in front of the camera. Emma thought it was a beautiful relic of her family's history. But little did she know that this photograph would change her life forever. At first, the photo seemed harmless enough. She placed it on the mantelpiece, admiring it from time to time as she went about her day. But soon, she began to notice something strange. The next time she glanced at the picture, the shadows behind her great-grandmother seemed darker, almost like a figure had appeared in the background, where none had been before. Emma shrugged it off as a trick of the light, or perhaps the result of her tired eyes, but the unease grew. She found herself drawn to the photo again and again, unable to shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Every time she looked at it, something had changed. The figure that had appeared behind her great-grandmother seemed clearer now, more defined. It wasn't a vague silhouette anymore. It was the figure of a man, his face blurred, but his presence undeniable. And as the days passed, his proximity to the family in the photo grew closer. Emma tried to ignore it, but the changes kept happening. The man began to stand closer to the couple, his features becoming sharper with each passing glance. At one point, Emma swore she saw his hand reach out toward her great-grandmother. The next time she looked, it was as though he had stepped into the frame entirely, standing just beside them with an outstretched arm, as if reaching for the camera itself. Terrified, Emma decided to investigate the photo. She turned it over, searching for any clue that might explain its odd behavior. To her surprise, there was something written in faint pencil on the back. "Don't look too closely." Emma's blood ran cold. Who had written that? Her grandmother had never mentioned anything unusual about this photo. The handwriting didn't match anyone she knew. In a panic, she decided to reach out to a local historian who had studied the area's past extensively. After hearing her story, the historian was intrigued and agreed to help. He told her that her great-grandparents' house had a strange history, one that involved a tragic event. Years before they had moved in, the original owners had been a family, much like her own. But one evening, something terrible had happened. The family had disappeared without a trace, and the house had been abandoned for years before her great-grandparents came to claim it. The historian hinted that this might be linked to the strange occurrences Emma was experiencing with the photograph. With this new information, Emma began researching the original family, the DeWitts. As she dug deeper into their history, she uncovered something chilling. a record of a young man who had disappeared from the family years before their disappearance. No one knew what had happened to him, but whispers in the town suggested that he had been obsessed with something dark, an old camera that was rumored to have captured not just images, but souls. Emma was horrified. Could the photograph in her possession be cursed? Could it be capturing something far beyond a simple moment in time? She thought back to the changes she had seen, the figure that grew closer with each passing day. Could this be the man, trapped within the photo, trying to escape? Was he reaching out to her? Desperate to understand the true nature of the photo, Emma took it to a professional photographer who specialized in old photographs. He was intrigued by the changes Emma described, but also deeply concerned. He told her that the photograph was unlike anything he'd ever seen before. It wasn't just a picture. It was as though the image itself was alive, breathing, changing in response to some unknown force. He suggested they try developing the photograph again, using the original techniques to see if it would reveal something new. When the photographer developed the photo a second time, the results were even more unsettling. The figure in the background had changed. He was no longer just standing there, but now seemed to be looking directly at Emma. His eyes, once blurry, now burned with intensity. The photographer gasped in disbelief. This wasn't possible. He hadn't touched the original photo in any way. This was the same photo, yet it had changed. Suddenly, the room grew cold, and the figure in the photo seemed to step forward, as if he were reaching out of the frame. Emma's heart pounded as she backed away. The air around her thickened, and she felt a pressure on her chest, as though something were pushing against her. The figure's eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, Emma was paralyzed with fear. She heard a whisper, faint but clear, "Help me." The photograph had come to life, and it wasn't letting her go. As she continued to investigate, Emma realized that the photograph had become a portal, a way for the spirit of the DeWitt family's lost son to reach out from the beyond. But the more she stared at the image, the more she understood. The figure wasn't just trying to escape, it was trying to pull her in. Every time the photo changed, it was as though the boundary between the world of the living and the dead grew thinner. Each time Emma looked at the photograph, the changes grew more disturbing. The figure in the background grew clearer, his expression more desperate. The whispers intensified, and she began to feel a growing dread, as though she was being watched, not just by the figure in the photograph, but by something far darker. Would Emma be the next victim of the Phantom's photograph? What was this spirit trying to tell her, and why did it seem so intent on reaching out? The deeper Emma delved into the mystery of the photograph, the more questions she had, and the more she realized that the photo's power was far beyond anything she could have ever imagined. Stay tuned as we continue to unravel the secrets behind the Phantom's photograph. What lies within the changing image, and who or what is trying to break free from its frame? As Emma's terrifying journey with the Phantom's photograph continues, one question looms larger than the rest. Is this cursed image a mere photograph or something much darker? As the figure in the photo grows more desperate, the line between the living and the dead blurs, pulling Emma further into a web of mystery, fear, and supernatural forces beyond her control. But the story doesn't end here. The haunting changes to the photograph are just the beginning. What is this trapped spirit trying to convey? Is Emma merely a bystander, or is she part of a much darker fate woven into the history of her family and their home? The more Emma investigates, the more she realizes that the photograph has a life of its own, and it's becoming increasingly impossible to ignore. If this story has left you on the edge of your seat, imagine what other mysteries and chilling tales await. If you don't want to miss out on more spine-tingling stories like the Phantom's photograph, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Let us know your thoughts on this eerie photo. What do you think is really happening? Could it be cursed? Or is there something far worse at play? Join us as we continue unraveling these dark secrets and mysterious happenings. Who knows what we'll uncover next? Stay tuned and remember, some photos don't just capture moments, they capture souls. Story number 4. Imagine walking into a quiet, dimly lit library, the kind with towering shelves and the smell of old paper filling the air. You're drawn to a particular book, its spine cracked, its pages yellowed with age. It's nothing special at first glance, but there's something off about it. You pull it from the shelf, feeling the weight of it in your hands. As you flip through the pages, an eerie chill runs down your spine. The words seem to shift in front of your eyes, rearranging themselves into something darker, something more unsettling. But what truly sends a shiver down your spine is the sudden feeling that you're not alone. The book seems to have a life of its own. Each time you open it, the air grows heavier, and the sense of an unseen presence becomes impossible to ignore. It's as if the spirit bound to that very book is reaching out, trying to communicate. But why? What's the secret hidden within the pages, and why has it been trapped there for so long? This is exactly what happened to Sarah, a young woman who stumbled upon the ghost in the library. At first, it seemed like a typical day at her local library. But when she discovered one seemingly ordinary book, she unknowingly opened the door to something far more terrifying. With each turn of the page, she became more entangled in the ghost's dark history, realizing that it wasn't just the book that was haunted, it was her. Stay with me, because this is a story you won't be able to forget. The book may be ancient, but the ghost bound to it is all too real. What happens when the dead are tied to something as simple as a book? And what does it want from those who dare to read it? Keep watching to uncover the chilling truth behind the ghost in the library. Will Sarah escape its grasp, or will she too become part of its story? It all began on a rainy afternoon, when Sarah found herself wandering into the old, abandoned library that sat on the outskirts of town. The place had always intrigued her. Its stone walls, ivy creeping up the sides, and the large wooden doors that creaked when you pushed them open. The library was one of those places that felt frozen in time, as if the world outside was unaware of its existence. It was silent, eerily so. As Sarah stepped inside, she felt an odd sensation wash over her, like she was crossing into another world. The air smelled of musty books and dust, the faint sound of a clock ticking in the distance. The librarian, an elderly woman named Mrs. Blackwell, was always polite but distant. She watched Sarah with sharp eyes, never offering to engage in conversation, but Sarah didn't mind. She was here to explore. The library was a treasure trove of forgotten knowledge, and today, she intended to find something truly unique. As she roamed the aisles, Sarah's attention was drawn to a particular section, one that she hadn't noticed before. It was tucked away in a dim corner, where the shelves seemed to sag under the weight of the old tomes. One book stood out among the rest. It was simple, bound in black leather with no title on the cover. Its pages were yellowed with age, and the spine looked as though it hadn't been touched in decades. Sarah pulled the book from the shelf, a slight tremor running through her fingers as she held it. It felt strangely warm to the touch, almost as if it had been waiting for her. Curiosity piqued. She flipped it open. The first few pages were filled with strange symbols, ancient runes that she couldn't understand. But as Sarah turned the pages, the words seemed to shift. They rearranged themselves in front of her eyes, forming different sentences every time she looked at them. Her heart began to race as she noticed something even more unsettling. The words didn't just change, they seemed to be written for her. Each new sentence felt as if it was speaking directly to her, as if it was somehow aware of her presence. Suddenly, the temperature in the room dropped. A cold draft brushed past Sarah's neck, making her skin prickle. She turned around, but the library was empty. The old librarian was nowhere to be seen, and the silence felt even more oppressive. Her breath quickened as she turned her attention back to the book. On the next page, the writing was clearer. It now described her, Sarah, a young woman with long brown hair and curious eyes. The words detailed her life, her family, even the books she loved to read. It was as though the book had been following her every move, every breath. Then, the words stopped. The next page was blank. Sarah flipped through the remaining pages, but every one of them was empty. A sense of dread began to settle in her chest. She tried to close the book and put it back, but the moment her hands touched the cover, she felt a sharp tug, almost as if the book didn't want to be released. The eerie coldness in the air intensified, and she heard a faint whisper, barely audible at first. "Help me." Sarah froze. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears as she slowly looked around. There was no one, just the silence of the library. But then the voice came again, this time louder and clearer. "Help me, please." Her heart raced as she flipped open the book again, searching for an answer, but all she found was a name. Eleanor, written in elegant script at the bottom of the page. It was followed by the words, "Bound forever." Suddenly, a cold shadow swept over her, and the hairs on the back of her neck stood up. A chill enveloped the room, and the air felt thick with an oppressive presence. Sarah couldn't breathe. Something was in the room with her, something that hadn't been there before. The pages of the book began to turn on their own, as if guided by an invisible hand. Each page revealed more about Eleanor, the woman who had once been bound to this very book. Her name had been forgotten by history, but her soul remained trapped within the pages, unable to escape. As Sarah read, she discovered the tragic story of Eleanor, a woman who had been falsely accused of dark magic and executed in the early 1800s. But her spirit had never rested. It was said that her soul was bound to the book, cursed to remain there for eternity unless someone could release her. As Sarah continued to read, the book began to glow faintly, and the room around her seemed to warp and distort. The walls of the library melted away, and she found herself standing in a cold, dark forest. The trees towered over her, their twisted branches reaching toward the sky like skeletal fingers. In the distance, she could see a woman, a figure shrouded in a tattered cloak, her face hidden in shadow. The figure was beckoning her, and without thinking, Sarah took a step forward. But then, a hand grabbed her shoulder, pulling her back. She spun around, but no one was there. The whispering voice came again, louder now, echoing in her mind. "Help me. You're the only one who can set me free." Sarah's heart raced. Was she really hearing this? Was it all a hallucination? Or had the book somehow transported her into the very world of Eleanor's torment? Suddenly, the library snapped back into focus. Sarah was standing in the corner, holding the book tightly in her hands. Her fingers trembled as she closed it, but the whispers didn't stop. They followed her as she tried to return the book to the shelf, but no matter where she placed it, it somehow reappeared in her hands. Desperately, Sarah ran out of the library, leaving the book behind. But even after she left, she couldn't escape the feeling that something was watching her, waiting for her to return. Days passed, but the whispers never stopped. She began to feel the presence of Eleanor in every corner of her life. The spirit was tied to the book, yes, but it was also tied to Sarah now, and it wouldn't let go. No matter how far Sarah ran, no matter how many times she tried to avoid the library, she knew she couldn't escape the book forever. Eleanor's ghost was bound to it, and as long as the book existed, the spirit would follow her, trapped in an eternal cycle. But why had it chosen Sarah? Why had the spirit attached itself to her, a stranger, rather than someone who had lived in the library's town for years? Stay tuned as the mystery unfolds. Will Sarah find a way to break the curse, or will she become just another lost soul, bound forever to the ghost in the library? The answers lie within the pages, but they may come at a far greater cost than Sarah is prepared to pay. As we reach the end of Sarah's chilling journey, we're left with more questions than answers. The ghost, Eleanor, bound to the book, has woven her presence into Sarah's life, and now Sarah is entangled in a cycle she may never escape. The haunting whispers, the unrelenting pull of the book. It's a curse that seems impossible to break. But what will happen next? Can Sarah find a way to free herself from Eleanor's grasp, or will she become yet another chapter in the ghost's tragic story? If this story sent chills down your spine, make sure to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think will happen to Sarah? Do you believe there's a way to break the curse, or is she doomed forever? I'd love to hear your theories. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel for more haunting tales like this one. We've got many more stories waiting to unravel, and you won't want to miss them. Stay tuned for the next chilling chapter. Who knows what mysteries the next story will reveal? Until then, remember, some books are better left unopened. But who knows what you might find if you dare to turn the page. Story number 5. Imagine stepping into a room at night, the kind of stillness that makes your every movement feel amplified. You've just hung a new painting on the wall, one that seemed harmless enough during the day. The colors are vibrant, the details crisp, and the image, perhaps a serene landscape or a portrait, looks peaceful, even beautiful. But when night falls, something strange happens. The shadows in the painting seem to shift. The colors seem darker, more intense, almost as if the painting is watching you. What if I told you that this isn't just your imagination? What if the painting was alive, bound by something dark, something supernatural that makes it move when the lights go out? The eyes in the portrait seem to follow you. The figures in the landscape twist and distort in ways that defy logic, and the once calming scene becomes a sinister force, one that grows stronger every time you gaze upon it after dark. This is exactly what happened to Lily, a woman who innocently bought a painting from an antique shop, only to discover that it was more than just a piece of art. It was a doorway to something terrifying. Every night, the painting transformed, as if it were alive, waiting to reveal its dark secret. The once peaceful depiction began to change, and the figures within the painting started to move. At first, it was subtle, just a flicker of motion, an almost imperceptible shift. But as time went on, the changes grew more disturbing. And soon, Lily realized that the painting wasn't just a haunting work of art. It was something much more dangerous. Stay with me as I tell you the unsettling story of the possessed painting, a tale so chilling. It will make you question everything you hang on your walls. What happens when art becomes more than just a reflection of the artist's mind? What if it has a mind of its own? Keep watching, because the truth behind this eerie painting is something you won't soon forget. It all started on an ordinary afternoon when Lily, a passionate art lover, stumbled upon an old, forgotten antique shop tucked away on a quiet street. The place had an atmosphere of mystery, with its dusty shelves filled with ancient relics, cracked porcelain dolls, and faded tapestries. But what caught her eye was a particular painting. The shopkeeper, a frail old man with a hunched back, was busy cleaning another item when Lily's gaze locked onto the painting. It was an eerie portrait, one that seemed to be both beautiful and unsettling at the same time. The painting depicted a tranquil lakeside scene, bathed in the golden light of a setting sun. The calm water reflected the sky's vibrant hues, with a solitary rowboat gently drifting along the shore. In the distance, there was a small, quaint house, with smoke curling from the chimney as though someone lived there. The peaceful nature of the scene seemed to invite viewers to gaze deeper, offering an almost serene atmosphere. But Lily couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about it. The more she stared, the more the details began to seem strange. The house, though beautifully depicted, appeared too lifelike, as if it was waiting for something or someone. The sky in the background shifted ever so slightly, as though it was never truly still. The rowboat on the water seemed a little too real, like it could move at any moment. Her curiosity got the better of her, and she decided to purchase it. That night, as Lily hung the painting in her living room, a chill ran through her. It was as though the air itself had changed, becoming heavier, more oppressive. She didn't think much of it at the time, believing it to be a simple trick of the evening light. But when the sun set, the atmosphere in her home changed completely. As the darkness settled, the painting appeared to come alive. At first, it was subtle. The shadows in the painting seemed to deepen. The water rippled more violently, and the clouds in the sky began to move. Lily thought it was just her imagination playing tricks, but she couldn't shake the growing sense of unease. As she sat down to watch television, she kept glancing at the painting. The house in the distance now looked more foreboding, its silhouette more pronounced, and there was an odd flicker of light inside it. It was as though the house was waiting for someone to enter. It wasn't just the scene itself. It was the feeling that something inside the painting was watching her. The next night, the eerie changes were impossible to ignore. Lily watched in horror as the figures within the painting, figures that she had initially thought were mere details, seemed to move. The figure of a man, once simply rowing the boat, now appeared to lift his paddle as though pulling the boat closer to the shore. The water beneath it churned in a way that made it look far more menacing than before. The peaceful evening scene had turned into something darker. It was as if the painting was drawing her in, pulling her into its world. But the worst was yet to come. At around midnight, Lily was sitting up in bed when she heard a soft whisper. It was faint at first, barely audible, but as she strained to listen, she realized it was coming from the direction of the painting. Her blood ran cold. She turned toward the wall, where the painting hung, and stared at it, expecting nothing to happen. But then, as she watched, the man in the boat seemed to glance at her. His eyes, which had always been a shadowy blur before, were now unmistakably clear. They were focused on her. A voice, low and rasping, emerged from the painting. "Come closer." Lily froze in terror. The voice wasn't just in her mind. It was coming from the painting itself. She bolted out of bed, her heart racing. But as she turned on the light, the room was empty. The painting appeared as it always had, still, frozen in time. The man in the boat was motionless once again, his eyes clouded over as though nothing had happened. Confused and frightened, Lily tried to dismiss the events as a bad dream, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something in her home was watching her. The next day, she researched the painting, trying to find some explanation for the terrifying occurrences. What she uncovered sent a chill down her spine. The painting had once belonged to a wealthy family from a town far away who had lived in the house depicted within the painting. The story behind it was tragic. Several generations ago, the family had been cursed after dabbling in dark rituals. They had tried to capture the souls of their ancestors, believing that doing so would give them eternal life. However, the ritual had gone horribly wrong, and instead of capturing the spirits, they had trapped them in the painting. The curse had bound the souls of the family to the image forever, and the painting had been passed down through the generations, each owner experiencing the same horrors. As Lily read more, she discovered that the painting wasn't just an inanimate object, it was a prison. The spirits inside it were trapped in a perpetual cycle of torment, endlessly repeating the same scene of the man rowing across the lake. The whispers were the cries of the souls, begging to be freed. And the more she studied the painting, the more she realized that they weren't just trapped, they were aware. They were watching, waiting for someone to come along and release them from their torment. The following night, Lily's nightmare became a reality. She woke to find the painting no longer hanging on the wall where she had left it. It was on the floor, its frame cracked, and the figures inside were no longer still. The man in the boat had stood up, his eyes following her every move. The house in the background seemed to glow, a faint light flickering from the windows. And as she stepped closer, the whispers returned, louder now, more desperate. "Help us. Let us out." Lily backed away in horror, but her feet froze to the spot as a dark figure began to emerge from the painting. The shadows of the house seemed to stretch and move, and the figure that had once been trapped inside was now crawling toward her, its limbs contorting in unnatural ways. Panicked, Lily grabbed the painting and attempted to throw it into the fire, hoping that destroying it would end the nightmare. But as the flames touched the canvas, they fizzled out, as though the painting refused to burn. The figure inside smiled, its face twisted with an expression of malevolent glee. "Do you really think you can escape?" Lily realized with horror that there was no escape from the curse. The painting was alive, and it wanted her. The spirits inside weren't just asking for freedom, they were demanding it. They would stop at nothing to drag her into their world, to make her a part of the cursed landscape, to trap her forever inside the painting. With nowhere else to turn, Lily began to research a way to break the curse, learning ancient rituals, consulting experts, and trying everything she could to rid herself of the painting's terrifying grip. But no matter what she tried, the painting remained unscathed, and the whispers continued to call her back. Each night, the figures became more real, more tangible, until one fateful evening, she couldn't distinguish between the world inside the painting and the real one. The lines between the two blurred, and Lily was faced with an agonizing question. Could she survive in the world of the painting? Or would she, like so many others before her, become part of its twisted landscape, trapped forever in the painting's haunted frame? Stay tuned to find out. What is the true nature of the possessed painting? What dark secrets lie hidden in its cursed brushstrokes? And will Lily ever escape? Or will she be lost within the painting's depths forever? And so, Lily's nightmare continues, with no clear escape in sight. The painting, once a simple work of art, has transformed into a living nightmare, a dark, unyielding force that defies explanation. The souls trapped within its frame, eternally bound by a cursed ritual, now demand freedom, pulling Lily deeper into their world each night. With each passing moment, the line between the painting and reality blurs further, and Lily is faced with an impossible choice: succumb to the painting's power, or find a way to break the curse before it consumes her completely. But what about you? Could this chilling tale be just a warning? What if your own walls are hiding secrets darker than you could ever imagine? So, the next time you hang a painting, take a closer look. Is it merely a reflection of the artist's imagination, or could it be something more? If you found this story terrifying, don't forget to hit that like button. If you want to hear more spine-chilling tales like this, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. And leave a comment below. What do you think about the cursed painting? Do you believe art can come to life? We'd love to hear your thoughts and theories. Remember, sometimes the things we bring into our homes aren't always as harmless as they seem. Until next time, stay safe and keep your eyes open. You never know what could be lurking in the shadows. Story number 6. Imagine walking into a small, forgotten shop tucked away in the heart of an old town. The air is thick with the scent of wood and dust, and the faint creak of floorboards echoes with each step you take. But what catches your eye isn't the dusty shelves or the cobwebbed corners. It's the dolls. Hundreds of them, sitting in perfect rows, their porcelain faces eerily still. They're not like the dolls you'd find in a toy store, though. Their eyes, they follow you. Their smiles seem too wide, their movements too lifelike. As the dim light flickers, you get the unsettling feeling that something isn't right. But what if I told you these dolls are far more than just toys? What if they were created with a dark purpose, designed to house the souls of the lost, the trapped, the tormented? This is the terrifying reality that surrounds one man, known only as the dollmaker. He wasn't just any craftsman. He was a man with a chilling ability to bring life to his creations. His dolls weren't made to be played with. They were created to house the souls of the dead, souls that had nowhere else to go. Each doll was a prison, a vessel meant to hold onto these lost spirits for eternity. And once you made eye contact with one of his dolls, you were bound forever. This is the story of the dollmaker, and tonight, we're going to explore the spine-chilling truth behind his creations. How did he learn to trap souls within the dolls? What happens when the souls start to rebel? And, most hauntingly, what happens when one of these dolls becomes aware? Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to uncover will make you question every doll you've ever seen. Keep watching as we unravel the terrifying secrets of the haunted dollmaker and his cursed creations. It was on a stormy evening, when the winds howled like lost souls themselves, that Rachel first came across the peculiar shop. Nestled between two older buildings on a quiet street, it looked almost abandoned, but something about it called to her, as if it was waiting. A dusty sign above the door read, "The Dollmaker," and the sight of it sent a chill down Rachel's spine. She stepped inside, the creaking of the door echoing through the musty air. The smell of aged wood and something faintly sweet filled the space, and she blinked in surprise at what she saw. Lined up on every shelf were dolls, hundreds of them, each one eerily lifelike. Some were porcelain with delicate features, others made from soft cloth or wood. But it wasn't their appearance that unsettled Rachel. It was their eyes. No matter where she stood in the room, it felt as though they were watching her. The lifeless eyes seemed almost too real. The shop's owner, an elderly man with deep-set eyes and trembling hands, noticed her hesitation. He smiled, but the warmth didn't quite reach his eyes. "Each of these dolls has a story, you know," he said in a raspy voice, his words almost too quiet to hear over the storm outside. Rachel, unsure whether she was intrigued or terrified, nodded and asked the question that had been on her mind since she entered. "What do you mean? Why do they look so real?" The man's smile faltered. "These dolls, they're more than just toys, miss. They are crafted to house lost souls. Souls that have nowhere else to go. People come here, sometimes desperate, sometimes grieving, and they leave a part of themselves behind in these dolls. I, I make sure they're kept safe. Rachel laughed nervously. It sounded like a tale too dark to be true, and she was about to brush it off as just another eccentric old man's rambling. But then, one particular doll caught her eye. It was unlike the others. It wasn't as intricately made, and yet there was something about it that drew her in. It had a small tear in its fabric, but its eyes were what held her attention. They were deep, dark pools, filled with sorrow and something more. "What about that one?" she asked, pointing to the doll that seemed to be calling out to her. The dollmaker's eyes darkened, and he hesitated for a moment. "Ah, that one," he muttered. "That's one of the older ones. Its story is, well, it's not a happy one. You see, this doll was made for a little girl who died many years ago. Her soul, it never moved on, and now it resides there, trapped in that doll. She can never truly rest." Rachel's curiosity got the better of her. "Can I see it closer?" The dollmaker didn't respond immediately, but after a long pause, he slowly picked up the doll and handed it to Rachel. The moment it touched her hands, a strange sensation washed over her. A coldness, as if she was holding something far older than she could comprehend. As Rachel gazed into the doll's eyes, she could have sworn she saw them move, just a fraction. The tears welled up in the doll's eyes, and for a split second, she felt a wave of deep sadness, as if the doll was crying out, desperate for something, desperate for release. But when she blinked, it was as if nothing had happened. The dollmaker noticed her distress and quickly took the doll back. His face was grim. "Be careful, miss. Not all souls want to be saved. Some are angry, lost, and will do anything to drag others into their world." Rachel wasn't sure what he meant, but she suddenly felt very uneasy, as if the room itself had shifted. She looked at the other dolls, still staring, waiting, and she felt the temperature drop. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end, and she realized she wasn't just surrounded by dolls. She was surrounded by trapped souls, each one yearning for something she couldn't understand. As Rachel made her way to the door, she thought she heard a soft whisper, faint but unmistakable. It was a voice, coming from behind her. "Help me! Let me out!" The voice was childlike, filled with sorrow. The sound sent a shiver down her spine. The door slammed shut behind her as she hurried into the stormy night. But even after she left the shop, she couldn't shake the feeling that the dolls were watching her, their eyes following her every step. That night, as Rachel tried to sleep, the whispers continued to haunt her. At first, it was just a faint sound, like a soft murmur, but soon it became louder, clearer. She could hear words, fragmented but unmistakable. "Help me, please, release me." Terrified, Rachel pulled the covers over her head, but the voice seemed to be coming from inside her room now, not from outside. It wasn't until the next day that she fully realized the truth. The dollmaker had not been lying. The dolls were indeed vessels, holding the souls of those who had passed, some willingly, some not. But in their stillness, they were waiting, trapped in eternal limbo. And some were not as peaceful as the others. Rachel learned that the dollmaker's creations were not just relics of a forgotten art. They were gateways to something darker, something that refused to let go. She soon became consumed by the idea of releasing the souls of these dolls, but every attempt to break the curse only led her deeper into the web of their hold. Each time she tried, the doll's eyes grew more desperate, and the whispers became more frantic, more demanding. And as time went on, the dolls began to appear in her own home, in places she knew she hadn't placed them. The cursed souls were restless, unwilling to let her go. They wanted to be freed, yes, but they also wanted to bring her into their world. The once innocent act of taking a doll into her home had now become a nightmare that she couldn't escape. Now, she wonders, are these dolls truly vessels for lost souls, or are they something far more sinister, waiting to claim their next victim? The cursed dolls never let go. They are always watching, always whispering, and always waiting. As Rachel's story unfolds, we are left with an unsettling truth. The haunted dolls, once innocent, are now vessels for something far darker, bound by the dollmaker's curse. They watch, they wait, and they whisper, pulling in the unsuspecting with their lifelike eyes. Once you make the mistake of looking into their gaze, you are bound, whether you realize it or not. But it doesn't end with Rachel. These dolls, created to house lost souls, are not the only ones out there. What if, right now, there's a doll in your own home, its eyes watching you from the shadows? Or maybe you've unknowingly passed by a shop just like the doll makers, drawn to a doll that calls out to you. Will you walk away? Or will you be tempted to take one home? This chilling story serves as a reminder. There's always something darker beneath the surface. So next time you see a doll, take a closer look, because it just might be hiding a soul waiting to be freed, or one that's waiting to trap you. If you've enjoyed this haunting tale, don't forget to hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to our channel for more spine-tingling stories that will keep you up at night. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Stay safe and remember, some stories should never be uncovered. Story number 7. Imagine standing in front of a mirror, brushing your hair or adjusting your clothes, when suddenly something unsettling happens. You notice a change in your reflection, a tear sliding down your cheek, a quiver in your lips, as if you are crying. But wait, you're not. No tears, no sadness. You're perfectly fine. Yet, there it is, your reflection, showing a sorrow that isn't yours. The mirror seems to capture emotions you didn't feel. What if I told you that this is not a trick of the light or a figment of your imagination? What if this mirror wasn't just reflecting your image, but something much darker? A reflection of your hidden pain. A window into a world where your deepest emotions are not only visible, but alive. This is the terrifying reality of the crying mirror. A mirror that shows you crying, even when you aren't. It doesn't matter how happy or calm you feel on the outside. The mirror will reveal a different story. A story of sorrow, of despair, of emotions you can't control. It starts off small, a tear here, a frown there, but over time, the reflection grows more intense. The crying in the mirror becomes more real, more vivid. It feels as though the mirror is trying to pull you into its world, showing you emotions you never knew you had. Stay with me as I tell you the chilling truth behind this haunted mirror. How does it work? Why does it show us crying? And, most disturbingly, what happens when you can't escape it? The answer is far darker than you might think. Keep watching, because the mirror's secrets are about to be revealed, and they might just change the way you see yourself forever. Imagine you've just moved into an old house, its wooden floors creaking underfoot as if they've seen generations pass by. The walls hold secrets, and the air smells faintly of dust and age. You love the feeling of the place, its charm, its mysterious past. But what catches your eye one day is the antique mirror in the hallway. You weren't expecting to find something like this. An old mirror with a tarnished frame that looks like it belongs in a museum rather than a cozy home. But it calls to you. There's something about it that makes you stop, just for a moment. Something about the mirror draws you in, as if it's waiting for you. At first, you think it's nothing more than an odd piece of furniture, but then you start to notice something strange. One morning, you're brushing your teeth in the bathroom, standing before the mirror. When you glance up to see your reflection, you don't feel sad, you're not upset, but your reflection shows a different story. Tears are streaming down your face. You're sobbing uncontrollably, eyes red and swollen, but you're not crying. You blink, confused, but when you look again, the tears are still there, still dripping down your cheeks. You wipe your face, but the tears don't stop. Your reflection is weeping, and you're not. You shake your head, trying to dismiss it. Maybe it's just your imagination playing tricks. But as you pass the mirror on your way to the kitchen, you catch a glimpse again. The same thing. Your reflection is crying, but you aren't. You feel a chill crawl down your spine as you realize this isn't just a trick of the light. Something is happening. The next day, the same thing occurs. You try to ignore it, telling yourself it's nothing more than a weird quirk of the mirror. But it keeps happening. Each time you stand before it, your reflection cries. The tears seem to flow more freely now, as if the sadness in the mirror is growing stronger, more real. And it's starting to make you uneasy. It's as though the mirror is revealing a part of you that you didn't know existed. Something buried deep inside, something painful, something you've been hiding. You move the mirror around, thinking maybe it's just the angle or the lighting causing the strange effect. But no matter where you place it, whether in your room, the hallway, or even covered with a cloth, every time you look, it shows you weeping, eyes filled with sorrow. And it's not just a fleeting image. The crying is vivid. It feels almost as though the mirror is amplifying your emotions, pulling out feelings you never realized were there. It's as though it's unlocking a hidden sorrow, one that you can't control. Soon, the crying becomes more intense. The tears are no longer just gentle streams of sadness. You see yourself in the mirror, sobbing uncontrollably, gasping for breath. Your face is distorted with grief, your eyes wide and filled with anguish. But when you step back, you realize you're still fine. You're not crying. You're not upset. But the reflection in the mirror doesn't care. It continues to show your pain, as if it's drawing out emotions that you can't escape. You try to turn away, but the tears won't stop. They're real, so real, but only in the reflection. You feel helpless, trapped by something you can't understand. As the days pass, it gets worse. You try to convince yourself that it's just a trick of the mind, but the mirror keeps showing you the same thing. Tears, grief, sorrow. You begin to lose track of what's real. Are you really crying? Or is it just the mirror distorting your reality? You start to feel like your emotions aren't your own anymore, like they're being controlled by the mirror. And it's not just about the tears anymore. The reflection seems to show more. You catch glimpses of things you didn't notice before. Your face looks different. Your eyes seem empty, like they're drained of everything but sorrow. You see yourself breaking down in the mirror, but when you look around, you're standing in your room, perfectly fine. The mirror doesn't just show you crying. It starts to show you things you didn't expect. You see flashes of events in your life, things you never wanted to revisit. Your past mistakes, the regrets you've buried deep within you, all flood to the surface. The crying becomes a physical manifestation of your internal struggles. But it's not just reflecting your emotions anymore. It's beginning to invade your mind. The mirror is no longer just an object. It's a presence, and its presence feels overwhelming. You start to avoid it, unable to escape the constant reminder of the tears, the sorrow. But the mirror follows you. It doesn't matter where you go or what you do. It's always there. Even when you're not in front of it, you can feel its pull. It's as though the reflection is alive, watching you, waiting for you to look again. And when you do, you're not sure if what you see is still just a reflection. Is the crying really yours, or is the mirror creating it? Is it bringing out the pain you've long forgotten, or is it twisting your reality, slowly pulling you into something darker? In the dead of night, you wake up to find the mirror calling you. You feel its pull, an invisible force drawing you toward it. You stand before it, your reflection more distorted than ever before. But now, something is different. The tears are no longer tears of sadness. They are tears of desperation. Your reflection doesn't just cry anymore. It pleads. It begs for help, its mouth moving as if to speak. But no words come out. It's as though the mirror has trapped you, showing you not just your sorrow, but something deeper, a version of you that's lost, crying out, and it wants you to listen. You try to tear yourself away, but the mirror won't let you go. You can feel the weight of your reflection pulling you in. It's like you're no longer separate from it. The mirror doesn't just reflect your tears, it reflects your soul. And once it gets inside, you're not sure if you'll ever be able to escape. You realize that what started as a simple oddity has turned into something far more sinister. The mirror isn't just showing you tears, it's trapping you in them. The longer you stay with the mirror, the more you begin to question your own sanity. Are you really crying? Or is the mirror just distorting everything you feel? Have the tears been yours all along? Or is there something else at work here? What if the mirror isn't just reflecting your sadness, it's creating it, forcing you to confront emotions you've buried deep inside? What if it's showing you not who you are, but who you're becoming? The mirror is no longer just a reflection. It's a doorway, a gateway to something deeper, darker. It doesn't just show you crying, it makes you feel it. And once you start, you wonder, will you ever be able to stop? As you stand there, staring into the mirror, trapped in its haunting reflection, you realize that the crying you see might not just be the mirror showing your emotions. It might be changing them, twisting them into something uncontrollable. The question now isn't whether the tears are real or just an illusion. The real question is, how do you escape the grip of this mirror? Could the mirror really be revealing more than just your sorrow? Is it drawing out hidden feelings, long-buried memories, and turning them into a vivid, living nightmare? And if it's not just reflecting your pain, what else might it be showing? What happens when you're no longer in control of your own emotions? The crying mirror is not just a supernatural object. It's a warning, one that speaks to the deeper, darker parts of ourselves that we often try to hide. What happens when we face the emotions we've buried for so long? What happens when they come to life, unwilling to stay hidden in the shadows? If you found yourself captivated by this eerie tale, make sure you don't miss what comes next. The secrets behind the crying mirror are only the beginning, and there's so much more lurking beneath the surface. So, if you enjoyed this terrifying story, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Tell me, would you dare to face the crying mirror, or would you run in the other direction? Stay tuned for more chilling stories that will keep you up at night. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe. You won't want to miss the next mystery. Until next time, keep watching your reflections, because you never know what might be staring back at you. Story number 8. Imagine living in a house you thought you knew every inch of. A place where every creaking floorboard and flickering light is familiar. But what if you discovered there was more? A door, faintly etched into the wall, hidden in plain sight. A room that no blueprint, no memory, no logic can explain. It was just an ordinary evening when the discovery happened. The family had lived there for years, never questioning the oddly spaced walls or the occasional hollow sound when they knocked. Until one night, curiosity got the better of them. A draft, cold and eerie, whispered through the hallway. Following it, they found the impossible. A door they were certain had never been there before. This wasn't just any room. It was unsettlingly pristine, untouched by time, yet filled with remnants of lives no one remembered. Faded photographs of people they didn't recognize stared back at them. Strange, cryptic symbols covered the walls, pulsing faintly in the dim light. And then there were the sounds, soft whispers that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. What dark secrets does this room hold? Who lived here? And why was it hidden so carefully? As they dig deeper, they uncover a terrifying truth that threatens to unravel not just the house's history, but their very reality. Stay with me as I take you on a journey into the room that doesn't exist. A story that will make you question how well you really know your own home, or the shadows that lurk within it. The evening had started unremarkably, with the faint hum of a distant storm rolling in. The family, Jane, her husband Mark, their teenage daughter Lily, and young son Sam, had spent the day cleaning out the attic. The house, a sprawling Victorian estate passed down through generations, was full of character. Every creak in the floorboards and every draft of wind told a story of its own. But tonight, the house seemed different, as if it were holding its breath. As the family settled in for the evening, Sam was the first to sense something was off. He felt a draft in the hallway that led to their bedrooms. It was odd, considering there were no windows in that section of the house. Curious, he called his sister. "Lily, feel this wall. It's freezing." She brushed him off at first, but stopped in her tracks when she touched it. The plaster felt unnaturally cold, like ice. Mark joined them with a flashlight, running his hand along the wall. That's when he noticed it, a faint outline beneath the wallpaper, almost imperceptible. A door? The family exchanged bewildered looks. This door wasn't there before, or at least they had never noticed it. With a mix of excitement and unease, they decided to uncover it. They fetched tools from the garage and began peeling back the layers of paint and wallpaper. The more they uncovered, the stranger it became. The door was old, its wood warped and covered in scratches, as though someone, or something, had tried to claw its way in, or out. When the last nail was pulled loose, the door creaked open, revealing a room they couldn't have imagined in their darkest dreams. The space was eerily pristine, untouched by dust or decay. Its walls were lined with bookshelves filled with volumes that seemed centuries old, their leather covers cracked and their spines embossed with gold. A grand chandelier hung above, its crystals sparkling as if freshly cleaned. Yet there was no sign of electricity. The light seemed to come from nowhere, casting the room in a dim, ethereal glow. In the center of the room stood an ornate desk, its surface littered with odd trinkets, an antique quill, an inkwell filled with blackened liquid, and a stack of yellowed papers covered in indecipherable scribbles. But it was the walls that drew their attention. They were adorned with photographs, hundreds of them, perhaps thousands. The photographs were black and white, capturing moments from another era. Men in top hats, women in flowing dresses, children holding ragged dolls. At first glance, it seemed like an innocent collection of vintage portraits. But then Jane noticed something that made her stomach churn. The faces in the photographs were familiar. "Is that Grandpa?" Lily whispered, pointing to one of the images. Mark leaned in, his face paling. It was unmistakable. The man in the photo bore a striking resemblance to his late father, yet the picture looked decades older than any photo they had of him. As they scanned the walls, they found more faces they recognized. family members, friends, even neighbors who had visited their home over the years. Before they could process this discovery, a low hum filled the air. It wasn't coming from the room itself, but seemed to resonate inside their skulls, growing louder with each passing second. Then came the whispers. The voices were faint at first, like the rustling of leaves, but they quickly grew clearer. Help us, find us. The words were fragmented, overlapping, as though spoken by many voices at once. Sam backed away, his small frame trembling. "Mom, I don't like this," he whimpered. Jane wrapped her arms around him, trying to reassure him even though her own heart was pounding. The whispers grew louder, more desperate. Suddenly, the chandelier above them flickered, casting distorted shadows across the room. One by one, the books began to fall from the shelves, their pages fluttering open as if an invisible hand was searching for something. Then the desk drawer slid open on its own, revealing a single, tattered journal. Mark hesitated but picked it up. The cover was embossed with the name, Margaret Blackwell. "Who's Margaret Blackwell?" Jane asked, her voice shaking. Mark opened the journal and began to read aloud. The entries were written in a frantic hand, describing Margaret's life in the house. She wrote about hearing whispers, feeling watched, and finding the same hidden room they now stood in. Her final entry sent chills down their spines. "I know now what this room is. It's not a room. It's a trap. It keeps us here. It feeds on us. If you find this, run." The family barely had time to process her warning before the room began to change. The walls seemed to breathe, pulsing in and out like a living organism. The air grew heavy, making it difficult to breathe. The portrait at the far end of the room, a striking image of a woman with piercing eyes, seemed to come alive. Her gaze followed them, and her lips began to move. "Why did you open the door?" she whispered, her voice echoing in their minds. The room erupted into chaos. The floorboards cracked, and the walls began to close in. Books flew off the shelves, their pages disintegrating into ash mid-air. The family huddled together, screaming as the whispers turned into deafening screams. And then, silence. What happened to the family? Did they escape? Or did the room claim them as it had claimed so many before? The answers lie hidden within the shadows of the room that doesn't exist. Stay tuned as we unravel the mystery further. What would you do if you found yourself face to face with a mystery that defies logic, a space that doesn't belong, and whispers that call your name? Would you dare to open the door and uncover the truth? Or would you turn away, leaving the secrets to remain buried? The room that doesn't exist is more than a chilling tale. It's a reminder of the unknown lurking in the most ordinary places. The family's story raises questions we may not want answers to. What memories are etched into the walls of our homes? What histories are hidden in the shadows? If you've been captivated by this eerie journey and can't wait to delve deeper into tales of the supernatural, dark secrets, and unexplainable phenomena, this is just the beginning. Your engagement makes these stories come alive, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think happened to the family? Did they escape, or did the room claim them? Drop your theories in the comments below. I'll be reading every single one. And if you're as fascinated by the mysterious as I am, don't forget to like this video. It helps more curious souls like you discover these chilling tales. Subscribe to the channel for more stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat, and hit the notification bell so you'll never miss an upload. There's so much more to uncover, so stay curious, stay brave, and remember, some doors are meant to stay closed. Until next time, sleep tight. Story number 9. What if I told you there's a graveyard that's hidden from the eyes of the living? a place that only reveals itself once a month under the ghostly glow of a full moon. Picture this: a forgotten plot of land, overgrown with weeds and shadows, where gravestones sit unmarked, their names long erased by time. And yet, once the moon reaches its peak, the cemetery appears, rising from the earth like a phantom, its long-lost inhabitants waking from their slumber. Only those brave enough to venture there can witness its eerie, fleeting presence. Welcome to the forgotten graveyard. But what if this graveyard isn't just a place of death? What if it's a place that calls to the living? A cemetery that hides secrets buried deep beneath its soil. Tonight, we'll uncover the chilling truth behind this mysterious graveyard. Why it only reveals itself under the full moon, and what happens when you dare to walk its cursed grounds. Keep watching, because what you're about to hear could change everything you thought you knew about the supernatural. Hidden deep in the woods, far from any town, there's a graveyard that most people have never heard of. It's a cemetery so old, its existence is nothing more than a whisper among the locals. But there's one thing that makes it unlike any other burial ground in the world. It doesn't appear on any map, and it doesn't exist in the daylight hours. The forgotten graveyard is a place that only materializes once a month, when the full moon rises high in the sky. And when it does, the ground trembles, the air grows thick, and the gravestones, some of them centuries old, become visible once again, casting eerie shadows over the land. The full moon acts as a portal, briefly pulling this forsaken graveyard back into the world of the living, where it beckons those who are daring or foolish enough to explore its haunting depths. Over the years, strange stories have emerged from the few who have dared to venture close to its boundaries. Whispers of ghostly figures walking between the graves, of chilling winds that seem to call out to the living, and of names appearing on gravestones that were once blank, names of people who never existed in history. Some say the spirits who rest in this graveyard aren't at peace, that they're waiting for something or someone. But what could they be waiting for? And why only under the haunting light of the full moon? This night, we're going to uncover the truth about the forgotten graveyard. What's the real reason it only reveals itself once a month? Why does it call to the living? And most importantly, what happens to those who get too close to its secrets? Stay with us, because you won't believe what we'll uncover on this chilling journey. Deep within the heart of an ancient forest, far away from the safety of town lights and the prying eyes of civilization, lies a graveyard, forgotten by time, untouched by the world. It's a place so shrouded in mystery that most have never even heard of it. The locals who live nearby whisper of its dark history, speaking of it in hushed tones and warnings. But what makes this graveyard different from any other burial ground in the world? What sets the forgotten graveyard apart from all others? The truth is, it's not visible at all, at least not during the day. Yes, you heard that right. This graveyard, which has stood for centuries, only reveals itself to the living once a month, under the eerie glow of the full moon. As the moon rises high in the sky, the ground itself seems to tremble, and the hidden graveyard appears like a ghostly vision rising from the earth. It's a place that seems to exist between worlds, a place where the boundary between the living and the dead becomes blurred. But why does this graveyard only appear under the full moon? And what happens when the moonlight fades and the graveyard vanishes once more into the shadows? These are questions that few dare to answer. But there are those brave enough to venture into the woods, hoping to catch a glimpse of the mysterious cemetery, perhaps hoping to uncover the secrets it holds, or simply out of curiosity. What they don't know is that, once the full moon begins to rise, they may find themselves stepping into a realm they were never meant to enter. The history of the graveyard is as shadowed as the land it rests upon. No one truly knows how old it is, and no one can say for certain who was buried there. Some believe it was once the resting place for a forgotten village, wiped from history by an unknown calamity. Others whisper that it's an ancient burial ground for people who practiced dark rituals long ago, and that their restless spirits still linger. What's undeniable is that the land is cursed, at least, that's what the villagers say. In times past, the graveyard was visible, but only during the night of the full moon. Locals have passed down stories of the eerie events that have occurred there, of people disappearing, of voices calling out from the graves, and of strange lights hovering above the stones. But as the years passed, the graveyard faded from memory, its location lost to the ages. Only a few know where it lies, hidden deep in the forest, and fewer still are willing to speak of it. Once a month, when the full moon rises high in the sky, the forgotten graveyard awakens. This is no ordinary graveyard. It seems to have a will of its own. The ground shakes and the fog rolls in, obscuring everything around it. Then, when the moonlight breaks through the trees, the graveyard appears, as though summoned by the very light itself. But this is not just a graveyard where the dead rest in peace. No, this place seems to be alive in a way that no one can explain. It calls to the living, drawing them in. There's a strange pull to the place, an energy in the air that makes it impossible to turn away. Even the most skeptical visitors have reported feeling something tugging at their minds as they get closer. It's as though the land itself is reaching out, trying to draw them into its fold. Many who have ventured too close have reported seeing strange, glowing figures between the gravestones, figures that flicker in and out of existence, almost as if they are tied to the moon itself. Others speak of hearing voices, low and mournful, calling from the grave. Some say that the voices are those of the dead, still trapped in the graveyard, their souls bound to the land for eternity. And still, others claim that the voices are something far more sinister, something that isn't human at all. Perhaps the most unsettling thing about the forgotten graveyard is the fact that it seems to exist in a world of its own. When the full moon rises, the air becomes thick with an unearthly energy. The fog creeps in from the ground, swallowing everything in its path. And when the graveyard finally reveals itself, the gravestones glow in the pale moonlight, casting long, eerie shadows. Some people say that the graveyard is a place of transition, where the living can step into the world of the dead, if only for a brief moment. One story tells of a group of hikers who were passing through the forest on a full moon night, unaware of the graveyard's existence. They didn't expect anything strange. They were just looking for a quiet spot to camp. But as they sat around their campfire, they noticed something unusual. A figure, a woman in a long, tattered dress, appeared through the mist. She was staring directly at them, her face obscured by shadow, her hands clasped together as if in prayer. One of the hikers, overcome by curiosity, ventured toward the figure, but as he got closer, he could feel something was wrong. The woman didn't move, didn't speak, but the closer he came, the colder the air became. His breath started to condense in the frigid night, and the very ground beneath his feet began to feel as if it was pulling him downward. Suddenly, the figure vanished, disappearing into the mist. The man was left standing there, frozen with fear. When he turned to run back to the camp, he found the path was gone. The fog had completely enveloped them, and the sound of distant whispers filled the air. The hikers found themselves lost in the graveyard, unable to escape the shifting maze of tombstones. The woman was never seen again, but they would forever remember the sensation of being drawn into that place. The feeling of stepping between worlds, between the living and the dead. There are darker rumors that surround the graveyard as well. The villagers who live nearby have always feared it, and many believe the full moon is a signal to the spirits trapped in the graveyard, allowing them to roam free. Some claim that once the full moon rises, those souls long trapped in the earth can leave their graves for one night, walking the land as they did in life. But there's one thing that everyone agrees on. No one who steps into the graveyard during the full moon is ever the same when they leave. Some people come back with strange markings on their skin, as if they've been touched by something otherworldly. Others return with no memory of what happened during their time in the graveyard, their minds shattered by whatever they encountered there. The spirits of the graveyard are not kind, and they do not forget. As the moon reaches its apex and the graveyard begins to fade back into the mist, it is said that the spirits leave behind a warning, an unspoken message that stays with those who have ventured into the cursed ground. The voices grow louder, calling out to the living, urging them to stay away next time, to never return. But those who are brave, or foolish, enough to ignore the warning might find themselves lost to the graveyard forever, joining the ranks of the spirits who can never leave. As the full moon wanes and the forgotten graveyard fades back into the darkness, its mysteries remain unresolved, its secrets locked away beneath layers of time and shadow. What is it that calls to the living, beckoning them into this cursed place? What lies beneath the soil, buried so deep that even the most fearless dare not dig it up? The graveyard's eerie existence, hidden in plain sight, leaves us with more questions than answers. And yet, one thing is certain. If you ever find yourself standing before it, with the moon high above, you may discover that there's a price to pay for curiosity. Now, as you reflect on the chilling truths we've uncovered tonight, think carefully about what you'd do if you found yourself in the woods, under that ghostly full moon. Would you heed the warnings and stay away? Or would you be drawn in by the pull of the graveyard, risking everything for the answers it promises? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a like, share it with your friends, and leave a comment below with your thoughts. Have you ever encountered something strange under the light of the full moon? We'd love to hear your stories. And if you're craving more chilling tales that will keep you up at night, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notifications. You won't want to miss the next mystery we'll uncover. Until then, stay curious. But remember, some secrets are better left buried. Story number 10. Imagine standing on the edge of a choice so tempting that it clouds your judgment, pulls you in like a magnet, and makes you wonder if it's worth risking everything you've ever known. Now, picture this. A ghost, pale, distant, and chilling, appears before you, offering a deal that promises to change your life. It's a bargain too good to resist, one that promises riches, power, or even love beyond your wildest dreams. But what if the cost of this deal is more than you can bear? Welcome to The Spirit's Bargain. Tonight, we'll dive into the terrifying and eerie truth behind a ghostly encounter that has left many shaken to their core. For centuries, there have been whispers of spirits making deals with the living, tempting offers that seem too good to pass up. These spectral figures, lost to time yet desperate for something, find a way to reach through the veil and offer bargains to those who dare to listen. Some say the ghost's motives are rooted in vengeance. Others believe they're bound by ancient rules, forced to make deals with the living in exchange for freedom. But what happens when you make such a bargain? Do you truly get what you asked for, or is there a price you didn't foresee? What is the real cost of a deal with a spirit? And, most hauntingly, Once you've accepted the spirit's offer, can you ever truly escape the consequences? As we delve into the mysterious and dangerous world of the spirit's bargain, keep in mind, what seems like the answer to all your dreams could very well be your worst nightmare. Stick around, because the story we're about to unravel will leave you questioning. Is anything ever truly free? Stay with us till the end, because this chilling tale might just change how you look at bargains forever. Keep watching and remember, sometimes the cost of your soul is hidden in the fine print. Have you ever felt that strange pull, that eerie sensation that someone is watching you? Perhaps you've heard whispers in the dark or felt the weight of an unseen presence around you. Imagine, then, if one of those whispers wasn't just a sound. What if it was a voice, a ghostly voice, offering you something you could never have dreamed of? A bargain, a deal that promises everything you've ever wanted in exchange for something far more sinister. This is the spirit's bargain, where the dead offer the living a deal that no one can resist. Not until it's far too late. There are those who say they've encountered such spirits, beings from beyond the grave who strike deals with the desperate and the willing. They offer things that seem too good to pass up: wealth, love, success, power, anything you could imagine. But these spirits, as ancient as the earth itself, know what they are doing. They know how to read your heart, to find your deepest desires, and use them to manipulate you. The question is, how much of your soul are you willing to sacrifice for your desires? It all begins when the spirit appears. Maybe it's in a dream. Maybe it's in a dark alleyway or in the middle of an abandoned house. The air grows cold, and suddenly, you sense its presence. A shadowy figure, glowing faintly, its features obscured by the darkness. But even in that darkness, there's a certainty. The ghost is offering you something. Something that seems impossible but so incredibly tempting. The bargain is sealed with just one word, a simple offer. I can give you anything you desire in exchange for your soul. A price. A price that seems too steep at first, but in your heart, you know you would trade everything for what it promises. The spirit does not hesitate. It doesn't force you into making a choice. It simply waits. But as the seconds pass, it makes you feel the weight of your decision. Every moment is an eternity. All your desires, your frustrations, and your ambitions come crashing to the forefront. You think about the things you've always wanted: fame, money, love, success, happiness, and for a moment, it all feels within reach. The spirit doesn't need to say much more. It knows you will agree. But what happens once the deal is made? What happens when you accept the spirit's offer? The first thing you notice is the change. It's subtle at first, a sudden, unexpected windfall. Maybe you find money where there was none, or a promotion at work that seemed impossible just hours ago. For those who wanted love, there they are. Someone perfect, drawn to them like a moth to a flame. The promises the spirit made come true, slowly but surely, as the world bends to your desires. But as these things begin to materialize, you start to feel something else. A chill in the air. A darkness creeping around the edges of your newfound world. You can't quite place it, but something feels wrong. Maybe it's the strange coldness in your chest, or the feeling of being followed. Perhaps it's the whispered words that only you can hear, words that pull at your sanity. You've gotten everything you wanted, but now you realize something vital. You've lost a part of yourself in the process, a piece of your soul. In some versions of the spirit's bargain, the ghost doesn't ask for your soul right away. Instead, it takes something else, something that can't be seen, something intangible. This is how the deal works for some. Over time, the price is paid. Little by little, your memories begin to fade. You forget the faces of your loved ones. You forget your past. And as the spirit collects these pieces, it becomes stronger. It grows more powerful, while you become weaker, more distant from everything you once held dear. Let's take the story of Emma, a woman desperate to find success in the business world. She was drowning in debt, desperate for a way out. One night, she encountered a spirit who promised her everything she had ever wanted: a career, wealth, power, recognition, if she simply agreed to give up a part of herself. Emma, filled with desperation, agreed without fully understanding the consequences. Her rise to the top was immediate. Her company flourished, her bank account bloomed, and everyone around her praised her. But as time passed, Emma began to notice something strange. She no longer felt the same joy when she was with her friends and family. She didn't laugh like she used to, and even when she was surrounded by wealth, there was an emptiness inside her that could not be filled. It wasn't until years later that Emma realized the truth. The spirit had taken her joy, her ability to feel truly happy, and in return, gave her the material wealth she had sought. She had been hollowed out from the inside. Her soul, what remained of it, was no longer hers to command. The bargain, which had seemed so sweet at first, had stripped her of the very essence that made her human. The success was all an illusion. The price she paid was far greater than she had ever imagined. But not all deals are so gradual. Some are immediate, and the consequences are much more direct. In one story, a young man named Richard was looking for love. He had been in and out of relationships, but could never find someone who truly understood him. One fateful night, while walking through the woods, he encountered a beautiful woman standing alone in the moonlight. Her features were perfect, almost too perfect, and her voice was like music as she promised him eternal love in exchange for a single favor. All he had to do was accept the bargain. Richard, blinded by his loneliness and longing, agreed without hesitation, and the woman, who was no mere mortal, kissed him. The moment their lips met, Richard felt a searing pain in his chest, as if a part of him had been ripped away. His heart felt lighter, as if something deep within him had been removed. He didn't know it at the time, but the moment he agreed, the woman took his soul and sealed his fate. Over the years, Richard found himself with the most perfect love he could ever imagine. A woman who adored him, who understood him, and who was everything he had ever wanted. But something changed. The longer they were together, the more he felt like he was losing himself. His memories of his past began to fade. His family, who had once been everything to him, became strangers. The love he had gained was real, but his soul was no longer his own. The truth finally struck when he discovered that the woman he loved so much wasn't who she appeared to be. She was a spirit, and she had claimed him as her own. What had started as a beautiful dream had turned into a living nightmare. She was not the love of his life, but the keeper of his soul, and she would never let him go. The price of that deal, the price of his soul, was something that no amount of love or wealth could ever replace. And Richard is not alone. There are countless others who have been lured into these ghostly bargains. People who thought they could control the spirits, that they could bargain with the dead and come out on top. But each one discovers the same painful truth. No spirit can be trusted. The deals always come with a price, and that price is never something you can afford to lose. As you think about it, ask yourself, what would you do if a spirit came to you with an offer too tempting to resist? Would you take the deal? Would you trade your soul for everything you've ever wanted? Or would you walk away, knowing that some things, no matter how tempting, are never worth the cost? The spirit's bargain is not just a tale of supernatural promises, it's a warning. A warning that sometimes, when something seems too good to be true, it is. And the cost of that bargain might just be more than you're willing to pay. And so, as we close tonight's eerie tale of the Spirit's Bargain, I leave you with this chilling question. Would you dare to make a deal with the dead? Would you trade your soul for all that you've ever desired? Wealth, love, success? Or would you turn away, knowing the price could be too high to bear? It's easy to get swept up in the idea of an offer that promises everything we've ever dreamed of. But remember, there's always a cost. Sometimes, what seems like a blessing is merely the beginning of an unbreakable curse. The spirits know our desires, and they know how to use them to their advantage. But the true question is, can we ever truly escape the consequences of making a bargain with the beyond? If this story has made you question your own desires, your own temptations, then I hope it's also made you think twice before accepting something that promises too much. After all, some bargains are better left unmade. Now, if you found this story as haunting as I did, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another chilling tale. And if you've ever had your own eerie encounter, or if you think you could resist the ghostly temptation, drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's continue the conversation. What would you do if a spirit came offering everything you've ever wanted? Would you make the deal? Or would you walk away from the bargain of a lifetime? Stay safe, keep your wits about you, and remember, some bargains come at a price that no one can afford.